I haven't seen anybody else do a deep dive into the mechanics of this yet, and I myself have had some misunderstandings about this in the past, so I used the Barony editor to throw together a little testing area, and I want to share what I've learned with you. To summarize a whole lot of testing very succinctly, these are the important takeaways. Nothing is multiplicative, all percentages go into a single additive pool with each other. These helmets are never worth investing in. Wear them if you don't have anything better, but do not spend scrolls on them. The Apprentice Hood is okay, but you only want to spend at most 2 scrolls on it. Spellbooks are the only thing worth spending enchant armor scrolls on for the purposes of increasing the potency of your magic. And finally, Shaman is the best class in the game for consistently enabling late game magic DPS. Okay, so let's begin by exploring the base damage of spells and how we can increase it. Sadly, the base damage of a spell isn't told to you by the spellbook it comes from. You can find the base damage of a spell in the extra info of the memorized version of the spell. Force Bolt is 15, Cold is 20, Fireball is 25, Lightning is 25, and Magic Missile is 30. These numbers are important because this is the number that all percentage increases go towards. What are the different percentage increases we can get? Well, number 1, the magic skill converts our intelligence directly into spell power at a 1-to-1 rate. So you can see that I've got 50 intelligence here, and that turns directly into 50 spell power. You can also see that we're getting 25% spellbook cast bonus, and that is simply the same conversion at half the rate. So half of our intelligence goes on top of our spell power, but only when we cast directly from a book. You can see this reflected in the base damage of our memorized magic missile, which goes from 30 to 45 because it's getting 50% from our intelligence, versus the base damage of the same magic missile in the spell book, which goes from 30 to 52 because it's getting 75%. Frustratingly, it only says 25% here, but it does still get the 50% from our base spell power. It just doesn't tell you that it's getting that, but it is accurately reflected in what it says the damage is, so rest assured that you can always trust the top number to be correct. Whatever it says next to plus magic damage, that's the damage that you will deal against an enemy with no magic resistance, like these humans, as you can see. 52. So far, we've got plus 75% damage from just our intelligence. Not bad, but 52 damage is not a lot when we consider the health pools and magic resistances of enemies after the Hamlet. So what can we do to make this better? Well, we could equip something like the Sphinx's Casque, which is a helmet you can find in the Gnomish Mines, and that increases our intelligence by 8, which gives us 8% more damage, for a total of 83%. But then it also gives 4% to our spellbooks for a total of 87% increased damage, bringing our magic missile up to 56 damage. That's not a lot. Well, how about the Magus headdress? That gives us a 20% increase to our damaging spells, bringing us from 75% more damage to 95% more damage, for a total of 58. Better, but still nothing crazy, and we'll need crazy to be able to take down vampires, cockatrices, and kobolds using our spells. So how do we get crazy? Well, we use enchant armor scrolls to create a Doomstack. The idea of Doomstacking is just investing a lot of blessings into a single item to create a large power spike. These scrolls are the most potent source of damage for spellcasting in the entire game. Why is that? Because we can use them to bless our spellbooks, and each blessing raises the damage by 25%. Now that's more like it. Why are we blessing the book instead of something like the Sphinx's Casque or the Magus headdress? Because they don't take the blessings as efficiently. Blessing the Sphinx's Casque is a dud because it only raises the intelligence by 1, which is 1% more damage. No thank you. Blessing the Magus headdress is better, but still only gives us 5% in each of those effects for a total of 10% more damage, which is 2/5 as powerful as putting that blessing into our spellbook instead. The opportunity cost of diversifying our blessings is an extreme loss in damage. The only reason you would want to bless the Magus Headdress over a spellbook is if you plan on casting spells primarily from your memory instead of from a spellbook. But with spellbooks being so robust in the current patch, there's almost never a reason to do that. Sure, the Magus Headdress is more versatile in that it confers a slight bonus to all of your spells and another slight bonus to all of your damage spells, but losing out on the damage potential you can gain by investing it all into a single book is absolutely not worth it when you consider what you're up against in the late game. The only helmet here worth putting blessings into is the Apprentice Hood, because mana regeneration is excellent, and this one in particular synergizes well with Troll's Blood, but I wouldn't recommend putting more than 2 blessings into it, because after 2 blessings, the mana regeneration bonus stops scaling. As you can see, we're at 50%. Anything further, it stays at 50%. Even then, depending on how many scrolls you have, it might not even be worth the extra 20% chance to regen mana when you could just get 50% more damage on your book, which would mean you cast fewer spells to kill things and thus require less mana anyway. Truly, by the time our book reaches something like plus 15, you really won't need that much damage, or you won't need that much mana sustain outside of bosses. The damage is already quite potent with this many blessings. That one's only plus 9. Finally, we have one more way to increase our damage, and that is the spell Elemental Focus. This spell gives us 2 explosions of additional damage at the point of impact for our spells, in exchange for constantly draining our mana while it's active and reducing the range of the spell. It doesn't tell us what the base damage is, but through my testing, I've deduced that the base damage per explosion is probably 15 damage, being boosted to an average of 21 thanks to our 50% additional spell power. At 21 damage per explosion and 2 explosions per cast, that's an additional 42 damage per cast on average, which for an unupgraded spellbook is almost double damage, and as our spellbook scales with blessings, it becomes a smaller percentage of our overall damage, but still always worth having on because the base damage is just too good. Even once our damage gets into the hundreds, an additional 40-ish damage per cast is still close to 20 or 30% more damage separate from all of our other scaling. If you have access to it, it's always worth using, but do note that it only works with these 4 spells, which excludes things like Bloodletting and Force Bolt. When you're choosing which spell to invest in, it's hard to go wrong as long as it's a spell that you can use Elemental Focus with, but I would say that Cold is probably the weakest and Magic Missile is the strongest. You can technically invest in a Force Bolt spellbook, which can be cute since it still costs 0 mana even if you cast it from the spellbook. But since you can't scale it with Elemental Focus and its base damage is nearly half that of these other options, you're giving up a lot of damage just so you can skip bringing Magic Restore potions. So we've established the ways that we can scale our damage. We've established that Enchant Armor Scrolls are the primary way we increase our damage as a spellcaster by way of blessing our spellbook. But how do we go about doing that in an actual run? We need a lot of blank scrolls, we need feathers, and we would like to have magic restore potions. That sounds like we'll need a lot of luck. Well, that is why I said earlier that the best class to facilitate this is the shaman. So the shaman gives us almost everything we need to pull this off. First off, the shaman starts the game with a feather. So you don't need to wait until you bring the blue orb to the hamlet or just hope you get lucky. You've got that important ingredient right off the bat. Second, the shaman has a good skill distribution, giving us decent magic and casting, while also dipping into alchemy so that you can start making your own restore magic potions if you come across an alembic, which, if you haven't found one by the hamlet, is guaranteed there. Third, the shaman gets some of the best mana regeneration in the game thanks to the mask and the fact that you'll almost always be shapeshifted if you're playing correctly. And fourth, the imp form is absolutely insane. Levitation, increased intelligence, the ability to hold spell books, which the other forms don't have, and guaranteed access to the elemental focus spell, which otherwise doesn't even have a chance to drop until floor 30. So beyond that, you'll definitely find a spellbook of your preferred flavor of elemental focus spell, at the very latest by Mystic Library, and it's almost assured that you'll find at least one scroll of enchant armor and charging that you can then start scribing with. The only things that you need to worry about from here are getting your hands on as many blank scrolls as possible that you can turn into enchant armor and charging scrolls, and surviving the early game. As far as the blank scrolls are concerned, the early floors in the mines are very important, where the loot table isn't as diluted with a bunch of useless scrolls. So generally, all the scrolls that you find in the mines are going to be either mail or blank scrolls, so just keep your eyes out. Even if you find cursed blank scrolls, it's worth holding on to them. You can eventually remove curse them later. After that, you'll usually be able to find another bunch in the hamlet, as long as you aren't unlucky. All goes well, you can usually step into the Baron Herx or Baphomet fights with a book between like +5 and +10, and by the time you get to the twins, you should be around +15 to +20. As for surviving the early game, the shaman is quite fragile, but you have all the tools you need for things to go smoothly. Immediately turn yourself into a rat, and run around and start recruiting every rat you see. You can use them to help kill skeletons, and you'll want to be killing as many things as you can find because you absolutely want to try and get access to troll form before you reach the gnomish mines. Once you're in the mines, you can use your rocks and your poison staff that you also start with to kill your first couple of lightning gnomes, so that you can start snowballing the rest of the mines while occasionally popping into troll form to recruit some trolls. Things go smoothly, you can walk out of the gnomish mines with like 4 trolls in tow, a handful of lightning staves, and access to imp form. If that happens, the run is basically over, barring extremely unlucky blank scroll RNG. Once you do have access to imp form, try and stay in it at all times, if possible, since leveling up gives you a stat boost based on the form you inhabit at the time that you level up, and the imp form has a bias for intelligence, which is obviously important to us. Alright, some other tips and tricks. This same logic that we went through for the damage spells goes exactly the same for the healing spells. Healing and extra healing have the exact same efficiency, converting mana into health at a 1-to-1 rate at base. But for the sake of speed, you obviously want to invest in an extra healing spellbook over a healing spellbook, so that you can enact your dreams of becoming a medic. As a shaman, ignore any armor you come across that doesn't have a secondary effect that you can benefit from while shapeshifted, like the Apprentice Hood, as AC from your armor doesn't carry over into your shapeshifted form. Keep an eye out for things like Boots of Speed, Iron Bracers of Constitution, the Intelligence Boosting Tunics, and the Bear Hood. The Marksman and the Cleric in the Hamlet have a lot of good upgrades for you. Other things. The Vampire race is the most powerful race to pair with the Shaman class generally, but the Goblin lends itself well to this strategy in particular because spellbooks in the hands of the Goblin last longer, which saves you feather durability, which saves you scrolls that would otherwise be scrolls of charging, which turn into enchant armor scrolls, which gives you more damage. You may not be able to memorize spells, but you really don't need to, especially since the imp form allows you to hold books anyway. Okay, I think that's everything. Yeah, this is just... It's absolutely a really fun way to play spellcasting in the late game. So I hope this was informative and helps you achieve that now in this latest patch with Keep Your Secrets, now that spellbooks are worth doing things with. If you think there's something I missed, or you have something else to contribute, leave a comment. Otherwise, do not subscribe to me. I am not a content creator. I upload very sporadically, and I don't upload anything unless I feel like I have something to contribute.